Tonight, Parliament orders Ghana Revenue Authority to suspend payments to Strategic Mobilization Limited (SML) until after its investigations into the $100 million revenue assurance scandal.
Parliament of the Republic of Ghana has resolved that the Ghana Revenue Authority must immediately stop all payment to SML, all payment.
Details as a minority promises a showdown over the matter.
With immediate effect, all such payments should be suspended and halted until the Finance Committee is done with its investigation. And I bet you, and let me be clear on this, there will be a showdown at the Finance Committee.
And we will stay in Parliament where the minority there say President Akufo-Addo has breached the Constitution and liable to be impeached following his refusal to sign into law 3 private members' bills passed by the House.
We should begin to think of triggering the provisions of the Constitution relating to what to do to the President when we willfully violate a provision of the Constitution. The President has violated the Constitution. Violation of the Constitution is grounds for his removal from office.
We have details from Parliament on the day the Speaker, Alban Barbing, tore into the President's reasons for refusing to sign the bills.
Absence of a judicial determination from the Supreme Court, the President's unilateral assessment of unconstitutionality does not hold legal water.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Parliament has tonight ordered the Ghana Revenue Authority to suspend all payments to the Strategic Mobilization Limited until after its investigations into the $100 million revenue assurance scandal. According to the Finance Committee's report, which has now been adopted by the House, GRA should cease all payments to the company from 1st January 2024. Addressing journalists, a minority leader, Dr. Casey Latofosing, urged the Finance Committee to do a thorough job.
Parliament adopted the report of the Finance Committee, and as part of the report, the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana has resolved that the Ghana Revenue Authority must immediately stop all payment to SML, all payment to SML, beginning January 1st, 2024. Again, the resolution of Parliament is that the Ghana Revenue Authority must be aware that the contract that the Ministry of Finance signed with them to SML constitutes a multi-year commitment. And Section 33 of the Public Financial Management Act is clear on the matter, that all multi-year commitments must be presented to Parliament for consideration and approval. So the contract in its current shape is not valid and must come to Parliament for approval. It is also important to note that the same Finance Committee, working with Parliament, has resolved that Parliament is going to initiate a probe into the SML. I urge the Committee of Finance to conduct this probe diligently and in a manner that will show transparency. So it shouldn't be held in secret. We should open it to public so that the public will hear what is going to happen, what the committee is doing. I'm very confident in the Committee of Finance, particularly the NDC side of the committee. You know, the Honorable Jinapo is here, and he will do what is right. The Honorable Adongo, working with the Deputy Ranking and members of the Finance Committee, I'll be part of the committee and will do what is right.
I want to bring in my parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante. Kweku, even before this probe starts, the minority side is promising a showdown.
Yes, according to John Jinapo, this deal is in such huge proportions that he believes they are going to uncover some humongous corruption at the very heart of governance, and that he's assuring the general public that their side in the minority are not going to let any stone unturned.
Indeed, I can confirm to you that the MPA has what they call the ERDMS. The ERDMS gives you real-time data, and this ERDMS has been hooked to ICOMS, which is customs. They also have automatic tank gauging systems. They have a bulk road vehicle tracking system. And when we met the MPA, they confirmed to us that indeed there was no need for this revenue assurance measure. And so let me assure the minority leader that we will do a diligent job. We'll put the nation's interest first. Because when you look at the contract, from the oil sector alone, Ghana produces about 60 million barrels of oil annually. If this company is to take $0.75 per barrel, it means that in 1 year, they are getting about 45 million US dollars from the oil sector alone. If you add the minerals sector, which has to do with our gold and other minerals, it means that they can potentially walk away with $100 million every year. When you add the 24 million cedis per month, culminating into almost 280 million cedis, your guess is as good as mine. And so we hold the view that with immediate effect, and that is the operative word, with immediate effect, all such payments should be suspended and halted until the Finance Committee is done with its investigation. And I bet you, and let me be clear on this, there will be a showdown at the Finance Committee.
And thankfully, I can bring in right now the Vice Chairperson on the Finance Committee, Patrick Yabuama. Also joining me is a ranking member on that committee, Isaac Adongo, also joins me right now. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on Top Story. Mr. Buama, let me start with you. Does this directive to the GRA to suspend all payments to the SML and also open up a probe into it from the Finance Committee, does it have the blessing of the majority side?
Thank you very much. Evans. Good evening to your listeners. Evans, I don't think the majority will be opposed to any investigation into any contract or any transaction or any arrangement in the country. The majority will support any activity sanctioned by the Speaker to look into any matter. After all, this is not the first time the opposition or the government has supported an investigation into any transaction. But the minority leader, Honorable Atuforsen, Honorable Adongo, my brother on the Finance Committee, and Honorable Jinapo were contributing to the motion for the approval of some amount of money to be appropriated for other government obligations. And in that debate, they raised issues with the SML transaction. Some of us have not been briefed. We don't have a full complement of the documents. It's a report that they also allege to have read by an investigative journalist, my friend Manasseh Azuri. So there's nothing wrong for the minority asking for an investigation into a matter. After all, we all are crying for transparency in the public sector in every dealing in this country. So I don't have a problem with it. The majority will not have a problem with it. We all want to know the truth or otherwise of this transaction. If it so happens that what they are doing is justified under law and it's going to help with our revenue enhancement, why not? But we cannot, on the face of a report, allege that something fraudulent has happened. That is my caution, sir.
So that offers clarity. Though this probe will happen with a full participation and blessing on the majority side. Secondly, there is also a directive tonight, as you've heard, to the GRA to suspend all payments. That too, you are in agreement on.
Evans, I don't recall the second deputy speaker who was in the chair directing the suspension of payment, because that would be very difficult for the House to enforce. Because SML, to the best of my knowledge, is a going concern, and if you are to suspend payment, if you were to suspend payment, and they succeed, these are some of the things we do, and issues of judgment debt and other payments to companies who are seen to have been not properly sanctioned, or who are seen not to have been properly treated to apply for some judgment debts, so to speak.
So again, on that point, the second point about the GRA seizing payments, that's not something you're aware of?
There was no such directive, because you see, these are allegations that the minority is asking for to be investigated. So until proven, how can Parliament, without having gone through the investigation that has been requested for by the minority, direct that payment ought to be suspended to a going concern? That is a very difficult one, Evan.
Mr. Adongo, your good friend, is on the line. Mr. Adongo, please clarify for me. That's your understanding, is it? And so that we can have clarity going forward on this matter from the minority side. What's your understanding on this second leg of the matter, which is the GRA cease payments until after your probe?
Well, the GRA, or Revenue Authority, is a covered entity, and covered entities are subject to the provisions of the Public Financial Management Act. And the Public Financial Management Act says that when a covered entity engages in a multi-year commitment, a transaction that spans more than 1 year, there are two things that must happen under Section 33 of the Public Financial Management Act. The first one is that you can only do that with the prior written approval of the Minister for Finance. And the second leg is that you must then get Parliament to approve it. So technically so speaking, that contract itself is null and void. It's in contravention of the Public Financial Management Act, particularly Section 33 of the Act. And so there is really no subsisting contract when the provisions of the law have been so brutally violated. And so to suggest that it will be difficult to suspend payment on an illegality beats my imagination. But of course, be it as it may, this was a decision of the committee, of which the minority and the majority are part of that committee, and we came to the conclusion that there must be a much more better oversight over the activities of the Ghana Revenue Authority, particularly to do with the agreements that it's taken on multi-years. And until we get to the bottom of that, and we have invoked in the report Article 103 of the Constitution for Parliament to undertake an investigation through the Finance Committee. And until the report of that investigation is made available to the plenary, and the findings and the directions of that report are adopted, there will not be any further payment beginning from the year that we are approving the budget, which is 2024. And what that typically means is that we have not appropriated money to Ghana Revenue Authority in respect of payments for those specific contracts. So where will you be paying the money from? You've not been giving money to pay SML. You are supposed to suspend the transaction because we think that it is in violation of Section 33 of the Public Financial Management Act, your appropriation itself has been affected by the provisions of this requirement, and that you are required to, as a matter of urgency, rectify that illegality by submitting that report and filing that report in Parliament. Parliament will review that report and take a decision whether the agreement should be valid, the agreement should be cancelled, or the agreement should be declared null and void. So this is a developing story. Our aim, just together with our colleagues on the majority, is to safeguard the public purse. We have taken notice of the fact that this particular issue of the SML has generated a lot of controversy and public interest. And I think that Parliament has taken the first step to sanitize that environment. It is not only SML. We put into the E-Levy Act a specific requirement that it will be illegal to outsource the collection of E-Levy to any third party. But nevertheless, GRA went ahead and signed a contract with a third party to collect those monies. There are several other multi-year commitments that have been signed. The ICOMS is one of them, the Ghana.gov, and numerous others that are costing the state billions a year. And we think that all that must be rectified and brought to Parliament for Parliament to take the ultimate decision as to how the future will look like. So I do agree that there may be some difficulties, but responding to those difficulties in a manner that saves the public purse and that protects the people of Ghana is the ultimate, priority of the committee and the Parliament of Ghana.
Mr. Boama, I have a copy of the committee's report on this subject on page 5.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Boama, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
On page 5 of that report from the committee that I see in front of me, it reads, part of it reads, the committee recommends that all payments beginning the next fiscal year be suspended until this House considers the committee's report on its investigations. Does that reflect what was agreed?
Yeah, that is exactly the
sorry, Mr. Adongo, I was just running.
The investigative report of the committee.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Adongo.
How we should proceed.
Hello, Mr. Adongo. I was just running that by Mr. Boama. Mr. Boama, does that reflect what was agreed?
Yeah. You read that recommendation. It's for the Minister of Finance and her agency GRA to accept or come back to us whether our recommendation will be accepted. We have made our recommendations.
So this recommendation is to the GRA or for the House to take a decision on?
The recommendation was in our report for the House to take that decision. And that the report has been adopted. Okay? So our views, based on our report, will be sent to the Ministry of Finance and GRA. And I'm sure they'll also respond if they have something to say about what we've recommended. It's not final.
Except that if the House adopts a committee's recommendation, it becomes a directive, right, is it not, to the agency in question?
The House has made a recommendation. We haven't heard from the Ministry of Finance on the recommendations made. So why don't we give them an opportunity to respond to our recommendations?
And Mr. Adongo, you expect to hear from the Finance Ministry before this payments are ceased beginning next year?
The recommendation is not to the ministry or the agency. The recommendation is to the plenary, the members of Parliament, to take a decision. And that is why the members of Parliament were requested in a motion to adopt that report. And the report has been adopted, which means that our recommendation become the decision of the House. And the decisions are in the House are supposed to be obeyed by the concerned ministry, department, and agencies. It is not for them to be responding because we did not make a recommendation to the Ministry of Finance. We did not make a recommendation to the Ghana Revenue Authority. We made a recommendation to Parliament as an authority and the institution that is clothed with the power to distribute the public purse and to make allocations to ministries and departments and agencies. And our recommendation is simply that for 2024, until those matters are addressed, there will not be money for GRA to pay those specific transactions. So I wonder why anybody would think that the recommendations were made to the Ministry of Finance and for which we'll be expecting a response from the Ministry of Finance.
Is that yes, Mr.
As a
Obama?
matter of fact,
Yes,
you see in the report that we specifically in our report directed that Parliament will convey these statutory requirements to the GRA. That is a recommendation to the House, and the House has adopted. The House has agreed that GRA should be informed accordingly. It's to be informed,
yes,
not to be recommended to.
So Evans, once GRA is informed, don't you think they also have a right to respond?
No, yeah, they respond, but that is not to say that the procedure, the process that was completed was a recommendation to them. No, it wasn't a recommendation to them. But of course, they have the right to respond if they disagree. But it wasn't a recommendation to the Ministry of Finance. It wasn't a recommendation to the Ghana Revenue Authority. It was a recommendation to the House to take a decision. And that decision has been so taken. That is just about it.
Okay. Mr. Obama, you were saying?
Yes, please.
You were making a point.
I said our recommendation was adopted in our report. And I'm saying that report and the recommendation will be transmitted to the appropriate agencies. You understand? If it so happens that they come back to us that your recommendations did not meet certain standards or certain contractual obligations, what do we do? It means we would have taken a recommendation that cannot be implemented. So let's hold our horses and await what responses we'll get. That's all I'm saying.
This finance committee probe, when does it begin and how long would it take?
Oh, no decision was taken on the probe, and no committee has been set, and we don't know. So is it going to be in perpetuity? Let's see. We're in a committee meeting now. We stepped out to speak with you. Maybe when we reconvene, we'll hear something about it.
Mr. Adongo, what's your own expectation on the timelines?
Well, the leadership of the committee, which includes Honorable Patrick Boama, myself, Honorable Richard Champon, who is the deputy ranking, and the chairman of the committee, will deliberate on the implication of this and take steps to schedule meetings and to start the activities that will trigger this investigation. So yes, there will have to be some conversations around how we proceed. But in the meantime, we have taken a decision, and that decision, how we implement it, leadership of the committee will decide going forward.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And you had Patrick Yabwama is a vice chairperson of the Finance Committee in Parliament. Isaac Adongo is a deputy. In fact, he's a ranking member on the Finance Committee in Parliament. Let me bring in Manasseh Aziriawuni. He's lead investigator, worked on the fourth estate investigations on the subject. Manasseh, you've heard the decision of the committee. You've heard the two leaders on that committee speak to this matter. Give me your reaction.
Well, Evans, it is very heartwarming that Parliament, and not only one side of the House, but both the minority and majority, deem it fit to get into this matter even before we hear from the Office of the Special Prosecutor. As whoever watched the documentary will see, there is so much money involved with very little or nothing in return. So if there's anything to be done, I think it is in order that they would act to perhaps safeguard the interest of Ghana.
Now, this subject has traveled now. The committee is looking into it. What happens to the OSP petition?
Well, I don't know how the laws work, but I doubt if this is a civil or so investigation and the OSP is likely to conduct a criminal investigation and perhaps undertake prosecution. So I don't think the OSP law stops that office from investigating what Parliament wants to look into.
So as far as you're concerned, the OSP can still go ahead. Parliament should still do its work.
I suspect so.
And as far as the specifics are concerned, you're ready to cooperate?
Sure. At the end of the day, we do this work to help with the state not losing money. And I have been to court a number of times to represent the state as a witness in investigations I have done. I went through months of cross-examination in the ABAJ case, which the special prosecutor is prosecuting. And even in the US here, I had to join via Zoom to testify. So if there's anything that wants to be, they want to do, I think it is only fair and natural that I cooperate, and then my team also would avail ourselves. And then whatever support or help or further information or clarification they need, we are always ready to help.
Manasseh, thank you very much. Manasseh Zuriawuni is a lead investigator with the Fourth Estate, and they had done the work that exposed the contract irregularities and the scandal, which is now a subject of a parliamentary probe. The House has adopted the recommendation for the GRA to cease all payments to SML beginning next fiscal year. That's 2024. Well, I want to stay in Parliament for a while longer, because today, still with the minority side, they have been talking about the president's decision not to sign into law a few bills. And they say the president's conduct in refusing to sign these three private members' bills passed by the House into law breaches the Constitution and therefore subject to removal from office. Now, a few weeks ago, the president explained fully why he refused to sign the bills, arguing they infringe on Article 108 of the Constitution. We'll hear from the minority shortly. First, listening to the Speaker of Parliament, who presented a detailed statement to the House where he accused the president of turning himself into the Supreme Court and interpreting the Constitution.
In the absence of a judicial determination from the Supreme Court, the president's unilateral assessment of unconstitutionality does not hold legal water. It is a departure from the established legal procedure, norms, and practices that govern our constitutional democracy. The appropriate lawful response, if there were genuine concerns about the constitutionality of the legislative action of this House, would have been to seek judicial review from the Supreme Court. The steps taken by the President in this matter reflect a misunderstanding of the constitutional process and undermine the principles that uphold our democratic governance. The constitutional responsibility to determine whether a bill falls under Article 108 or not is mandated, and it resides in the person presiding over the proceedings. Under Article 1068, when the President refuses to assent to a bill, two courses of action are available to him. Firstly, he is required to state in the memorandum to the Speaker the specific provisions of the bill which, in his opinion, need reconsideration by Parliament. Alternatively, the President can inform the Speaker that he has referred the bill to the Council of State for consideration and comment under Article 90 of the Constitution.
Well, that's a speaker there on that very controversial subject. The minority side is actually raising the question of impeachment now on the back of what we've heard.
Constructively aware of the exercise of your discretion to admit this bill. So he cannot, after everything is done, go and write a letter like this to this House. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that there is a provision in Article 69 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, Article 69 of the Constitution is very, very important. That is the article that deals with the issue of removal of president. Removal of president. Mr. Speaker, it's very, very important. Removal of president. It says that the president shall be removed from office if he is found in accordance with the provisions of this article. A, to have acted in willful violation of the oath of allegiance and the presidential oath set out in the second schedule, or in willful violation of any other provision of this Constitution. He has willfully violated the provisions of the Constitution that give us the power to do what we have done, and which also gives him a responsibility after we do what we have done. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that we should begin to think of triggering the provisions of the Constitution relating to what to do to the president when we willfully violate a provision of the Constitution. We should begin triggering those provisions. The president has violated the Constitution. Violation of the Constitution is ground for his removal from office. Mr. Speaker, I think that is where the direction of discussion should be going from now onwards.
Kweku Asante with me in the studio. Kweku, what about the majority side? What's your position on this?
Well, so the majority side decided that this commenting on the speaker's opinion on the president's refusal to ascend the bills, they are not going to comment on it. So it was a complete boycott. The majority leader is expressing his side's revulsion at the speaker's refusal to give them enough time to look into the issues that the speaker have put out so that he can comment appropriately.
Position of the majority has been canvassed by the deputy majority leader that unless and until we have copies of your own statement, we are not going to debate this matter. Having said so, Mr. Speaker, Majority Leader, I have not called on you to debate. I call on you to comment. But you stated that I had the opportunity to research. Yes. And I'm saying that you also have that opportunity because you also got the letter the same day I got the letter. So if I did my research, you have also had the opportunity to do your research. The other members are agreed, but not you. Mr. Speaker, it is what you have read